Mike here at CBI Off-Road. Today we're going to be showing you how to install our Covert Series T3 half bumper. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first step, we're going to be removing our grill just to have better access, because we're actually going to be removing the black piece off the front of this bumper, and then we're going to be trimming up around it. So we'll go ahead and remove this. There's two screws, there's one right here, and then you got a clip right here. So we'll go ahead and remove those. If your vehicle does have the sensor in the grill, there's going to be a connector right here. This vehicle doesn't have it, but you will have to disconnect that in order to pull the grill. So it's going to pop that out and then just give it a nice little tug, and that'll pop right out. All right, so our next step, we're going to be removing our lower skid plate. And the main reason we're removing that is that we need to gain access to our sway bars where our mounting is, because we're going to have some brackets going to bolt in there. So just to pre-prep, we're going to remove our skid plate, and then we'll unbolt those sway bar mounts. Alright, so next we're going to be removing our sway bar brackets. We're just going to be removing this piece. If yours does have a lift kit, more than likely it does have the sway bar drop brackets in it. So we're going to remove those as well. All right, with our sway bar drop down, we're gonna go ahead and remove these two little end cap pieces on the bottom of the frame. Is 17 millimeter. We're also gonna remove our factory tow hook, two 17 millimeters, and then the other one on the other side. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these couple of small 10 millimeter bolts that are on the bottom of the bumper here, because we're going to end up cutting this part of it out. So we'll go ahead and remove those real quick. Alright, so first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing this black piece, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can reach in from the back side, especially if you take your grill off, and there are some clips along here that you're going to have to get to, but there's two main ones on the ends. They're going to be the hardest ones to get to. Otherwise, if you're not worried about this thing, you can just pull that thing off of there, and the plastic clips and stuff will just break. Or you can remove the whole bumper off and remove it that way. But on this one, we don't plan on reusing this, so we're just going to tear it off. Alright, so now we got our black little plastic piece off of there. We can talk about our cut. So we're going to be cutting right here in this corner. We're just going to follow this little line right along here the whole way. You don't want to cut above it, because we're actually going to be putting our plastic trim along it once we get it all cut. So we're going to start right here at this corner at the bottom of the bumper. We're just going to follow that line all the way across. Alright, so I'm going to be using just a 3-inch small cut-off wheel to do this one, because it's pretty simple and easy. I am going to start just below my line so that I can clean the line up and put it forward to that exactly. If I start directly on the cut line, it may get a little bit off and things like that. So I'm going to start just below it, and then I'll clean it up after I get it all cut. so now with our line cut just below, I'm going to take my sanding disc and we're going to go ahead and just finish this line up right where we were talking about, right in that kind of corner there. And once we're done with that, get that all nice and smooth, we can put our trim on. Alright, so now we have our line kind of cleaned up and trimmed up to where we want it. I'm just going to take a little deburring tool and clean up the plastic. You can also use like a razor blade, file, whatever you need to use. So I'm just going to go along, clean up all this excess little bit of plastic that's left over from sanding it down or cutting it. And once we get that all cleaned up, we'll go ahead and put our trim on. Alright, so we got all of our edges cleaned up, got all a little bit of excess plastic and stuff got off of there. So we can go ahead and get our trim, we can put that on. So I'm just going to start right down here at the bottom where the bumper and the fender liner kind of meet together. We're just going to push that on. We're just going to follow this line all the way along. So there's one more screw that is attaching the bumper, and it's attaching to the crash beam, and it's this little one in here, right here on the bottom. So we'll go ahead, take that one out, then we can get that, now we can unbolt the crash beam and pull that out of our way. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and unbolt our crash beam. There's going to be 3 14 millimeters right here on each side, so we'll go ahead and take those off, and then we'll have 3 more behind that. Alright, with the front part of the crash beam out of the way, we can get to these last 3 on each side. We'll get both of them, and then we'll Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and relocate our power steering cooler. There's 2 12 millimeter bolts here that we're going to go ahead and pull out, and then we'll get our little brackets and we're going to push this thing back and locate it back further. After you remove the 2 front bolts for the power steering cooler, you're going to have 1 more that you're going to need to relocate or unbolt, and it's going to be right here. We'll go ahead and unbolt that one, and then we're going to leave that one out because it's just going to get pushed back and it's not going to go back into place. Alright, so you're going to get these little relocation tabs. You're going to get those and some small nuts and bolts. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our relocation tab. It's going to go right on the bottom. We're going to take our bolt. We're going to put it through the original hole and through our relocation tab. And we're just going to hand tighten this. And then we got one for the other side as well. Alright, so once we got our brackets in place, we can go ahead and kind of push this back. We can put our original 2 bolts back in here, and we'll just hand tighten these down real quick. And what we're going to want to do is, we're going to push this bracket all the way forward. We're going to go ahead and tighten this one down. We'll do the same to this side. Except we're going to push this one all the way backwards. And now, one thing you do want to make sure is we don't want to push this cooler all the way back into your AC condenser. So we push the bracket all the way forward, but then we're going to pull this one in the back slot forward so it's not contacting our AC condenser. Once you got it in your right spot, we can go ahead and tighten that down with an 11 millimeter. Do the same thing to the other side. Get it positioned where we want it, and we can go ahead and tighten it down. So next thing we're going to do is we're just going to trim our fender liners a little bit. We have some brackets that are going to be coming through right here. So we're just going to kind of follow a nice line. We're just going to trim them up, come up, and we'll cut those out on both sides real quick. All right, so one thing we're going to need to do is there's these tabs that stick out right next to where the bumper is going to be mounted. They're in the way of our side support brackets. So we're just going to you can either bend these over out of the way because they're pretty thin, pretty easy to bend over, or you can take and cut them out. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to cut them real quick. After cutting those off, there is some bare metal. I'm just going to go ahead and throw a little paint on them so we don't get rust built up there. All right, so now we got everything prepped for our bumper to be installed. We're gonna go ahead and finish up our trim. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna sand right along this line right here. We're just gonna follow that all the way along the bumper, get that sanded up, cleaned up real nice, then we'll throw our little bit of edge trim on there, and then we can go ahead and test fit the bumper in there. All right, so with our bumper all trimmed up, we're gonna go ahead and clean this up. I just use an edge trimming tool. Just cleans all that stuff off of there pretty easily. So we'll go ahead and clean this all up, and then we can put our trim on, and then we can go ahead and fit our bumper. All right, so now we got our bumper all cut, trimmed up. You're gonna go ahead and get some trim like this in with your bumper, and we're just gonna start right down here at this edge, and we're just gonna follow this all the way up. All right, one last thing before we go ahead and put our bumper on is these plastic pieces in here. We're gonna go ahead and just kind of trim them right at this line all the way across. You can do that, or you can just go ahead and remove them. Not a big deal either way. But like I said, we're just gonna go ahead and trim ours real quick. One other thing we're going to want to do is this inside flap is just kind of loose. So the original hole that was holding it in, it was attached to our crash beam that we took out. So I'm just going to take a zip tie. We're just going to go through the bumper and through the fender liner. We're just going to wrap it around. We're just going to zip tie this thing down in place so that it stays nice and tight, kind of hidden out of the way. We'll trim that off and that'll be good to go. All right, so on this Covert series bumper, we do need to trim this hook out of the way. So we're just gonna cut it off right here, you know, flush with the frame. So we'll do that real quick, and then we can get our bumper on. All right, so now we got that cut off. We went ahead and spray painted it, take care of the bare metal so it doesn't rust. So once that dries, we're all good. We can go ahead and put our bumper on. All right, so we got our bumper on there. As you can tell, you might need a friend to help you put it in there, especially if you got a winch. If it's by itself, you know, just the bumper, maybe a light bar, you can totally put that in there without any help. But if it's got a winch, you're probably gonna wanna grab somebody to help you out with that. So once we got ours on, we got a couple of our bolts started in here. So we'll go ahead and tighten those up just to where they're not quite tightened all the way down. Now we'll get the rest of our bolts in. We can get it fitted where we want it, and we can go ahead and tighten everything down. All right, so now with our 4 bolts on the outside, just kind of hand tight, get this thing snugged up against the bump or against the frame. We can take our 1/2-inch bolt with our washer, our serrated flange nut. We're going to insert them into our bottom holes here that go into the bottom of the frame. That's going to go ahead and we're going to pull this bumper up just a little bit more and tighten those down a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and tighten the rest of our bolts on the front. And we should have it all fitted. Once we got those bottom bolts nice and snugged up, we can go ahead and we can tighten these outside ones up just to get it finished up. All right, so now that we have our bumper all bolted up and in place, we can go ahead and put in our side support brackets. Now, the side support brackets, there's going to be a plastic clip that goes over the top of one of the holes that we're going to use. So we just need to remove that clip on the inside and the outside of the frame on each sides. And then we can go ahead and set our brackets up there and get them ready to get installed. All right, so these are the side support brackets. So they're gonna go right in along the frame. These are gonna bolt to the side of our bumper up in here. We'll show you. And I just got our long bolt first. So we'll set these in place, put our bolt through. There. Then we have a strut washer and our serrated flange nut. Gonna go on the other side. We're just gonna hand tighten those down. We'll go ahead and put the rest of our hardware in. Once we got our longer bolt through the frame, we can go ahead and match up our side support brackets to our bumper. We're gonna have some smaller hardware here. We'll go ahead and put the nut on the inside. And just hand tighten these down. We'll repeat that on the other side. So now we have our bolt through the frame and our 2 bolts through to the bumper. We can go ahead and we can put, if you have your drop brackets for your sway bar, we can go ahead and put those back in. They're gonna go on top of our side support brackets, and then we can go ahead and put our sway bar brackets back on. Now, if you don't have the drop brackets, obviously you're just gonna be going ahead and putting your regular sway bar brackets back in place. All right, and now we can go ahead and put our regular sway bar brackets back up there. Go ahead and put your 1 forward slotted bolt in, push that up into place, and put the rear bolt in, then we can do that on the other side as well. All right, so with our sway bar put back in place, now we can go ahead and tighten up our side support brackets through the frame and to the bumper. All right, so we're getting ready to put our skid plate back on. And one of the things we're gonna do is, this had the little tabs here that hold the front of the skid. Well, the one on this side we already trimmed off. I already cut that guy off because it gets too close to the bumper. But once we trim that one off, the skid goes right back up into place. All right, so we're getting ready to put our faceplate on now. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put our little U-hook nuts on there. So we're gonna have 5 of these, and we're just gonna tap these into place. They'll snap in. And we got 2 more we're gonna put right here. All right, we got these last 2. They're gonna go up in here. I'm just gonna kind of use a screwdriver and pop those up into place. All right, so now with our hooks in place, we can go ahead and set our faceplate up there. And we're just gonna put these in just lightly. We don't wanna tighten these all the way down yet, because we also wanna get our fair lead in place. Now, if you're not installing a winch, then you don't have to worry about that as much, but we are installing a winch on this vehicle, so go ahead and get these just hand tied in there, and then we can go ahead and put our fair lead on. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put our roller fair lead on here. Get our bolt pushed through there, and we'll reach down from the back side. Get our nut started. All right, so now with our fair lead bolted in place, we can go ahead and tighten up our 5 Allen heads for our faceplate, and then we'll be all done with the front. All right, so one of the other things we're gonna finish off is we have 2 more bolts left that we're gonna go ahead and tighten up on each side, just these 2 inside ones. So we'll go ahead and tighten those up real quick, and the bumper will be completely done with all the hardware to have it mounted up. So at this point, if you have a winch or like a light bar or something, you may want to just finish up your wiring where you got the grill out. Makes everything a lot easier to run your harnesses and everything over to the battery. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to finish wiring our winch up, and then we can put our bull bar on, and then we can put our grill on. All right, and so one of the last things, if you did purchase the bull bar, which you can, we're going to go ahead and install this as the last thing that goes on. These 4 holes here, we're going to be coming right through our little slot cutouts, and then we have a plate for the back side to help hold it in place. So we'll go ahead, put 2 of these in, slide this thing in place. We'll put our plate on the back side. And we can put our nuts on the back side. All right, so now with all the bolts in there, we can kind of push this thing. I'm going to push it all the way up into place, and we're going to tighten a couple of these down just to get it to hold. And then we'll go to the other side, push it up into place. We'll do the same thing. Once we get two of them just held in place, we got it where we want it, we'll go ahead and tighten the rest of them down. All right, so got the bull bar on. Now we can go ahead and put our grill back in, and it's just gonna fit right back in there. We'll bolt that down, and we'll be all finished up. All right, so that takes care of the installation of our T3 Covert Series half bumper. If you guys have any questions or concerns, give us a call here at CBI Offroad or email us. Thanks.